When we picture ancient philosophy, there's this very specific, almost oppressive expectation of gravity to it.
Oh, absolutely. It's very serious.
Right. We imagine this dusty museum. You picture like marble statues of men in togas in ancient Rome or Athens.
Guys with the long flowing beards.
Exactly. Just staring thoughtfully into the middle distance, handing down these incredibly heavy, profound truths about the universe. It all feels so pristine,
Yeah.
like it's totally untouchable.
It feels distant, yeah. We have this collective cultural assumption that wisdom requires a certain aesthetic. Like it has to be packaged in dusty books or, I don't know, debated in ivy-covered academic halls or carved into stone pillars.
Yeah, literally carved in stone.
But the original Stoics, they would have found that hilarious. Zeno, the guy who actually founded Stoicism, literally taught on a public porch in Athens, the Stoa Poikile.
Just out in the open.
Just out in the open. It was a bustling marketplace full of merchants, politicians, everyday people. It wasn't meant for the ivory tower at all. It was meant for the noise of the street.
And yet, we've kind of lost that street-level practicality in how we view it today. But then you step into the world of modern animation, and suddenly that pristine marble statue just totally shatters.
It really does.
Because we're looking at a philosophical landscape that completely flips our expectations. Today on this deep dive, we aren't looking to Marcus Aurelius or Seneca to help you navigate modern chaos.
No, we are not.
We are looking at a green-haired, rectangular-headed cartoon kid who barely speaks a single word.
It is a truly spectacular pivot from the traditional philosophical canon, I have to say.
Right.
We are diving into the world of Phineas and Ferb, and specifically the quiet half of that iconic duo, Ferb Fletcher, because he is, without exaggeration, a walking, breathing well, animated masterclass in practical philosophy.
I am so incredibly here for this, because when you actually peel back the layers of this, this silly summer vacation cartoon, Ferb operates as a perfect living embodiment of thousands of years of ancient wisdom.
He really does.
So our mission today is to dig deep into his specific habits, his reactions, and his whole worldview. We're going to pull out concrete daily tools to help you, the listener, manage professional crises, handle impossible coworkers, and cultivate a genuine deep peace of mind.
But before we jump into the animated roller coasters and time-traveling shenanigans, we need to recalibrate our definition of what Stoic actually means, because the modern interpretation has undergone this massive distortion.
Let's unpack that, because I'll admit, when I first hear the word Stoic, with the lowercase s, I picture a brick wall.
Right, the unfeeling robot.
Yeah, exactly. I picture someone who bottles everything up, bites their tongue, and just suffers in silence.
Yet, that is the prevailing myth. But capitalist Stoicism, the actual philosophy, is not about eradicating your emotions. It's not about pretending you don't feel pain, grief, or, immense stress.
Okay, so what is it then?
Think of it as a highly sophisticated operating system for your brain. The goal is to experience the world in all its vivid colors, but to systematically train your responses so that external events don't dictate your internal weather.
I love that phrase, internal weather.
Yeah, so whether your train is delayed, or you receive a remarkably rude email from a client, or a literal natural disaster strikes, the philosophy provides a framework to keep your inner sanctuary intact.
An operating system for the brain. That makes so much sense. And if we look at Ferb Fletcher, he is running the absolute most optimized, bug-free version of that software on the market.
Unquestionably.
Let's look at the core dynamic of the show to see this in action. Because every single day of summer vacation, these two stepbrothers wake up and build something impossible. But their approaches are entirely opposed.
Right, they are total opposites in execution.
Phineas is the visionary. He is the relentless talker. He has the triangle head pointing upward, always looking to the sky, waking up and declaring, "Ferb, I know what we're going to do today."
He is pure, unbridled, outward energy. He pitches the wild ideas. He rallies the neighborhood kids. He conducts the symphony, essentially.
But Ferb is the anchor. He's the man of action. He finds his immense strength in absolute calm. And if we apply the ancient Greek framework to him, he perfectly embodies the 4 cardinal virtues of Stoicism. I have the terms right here, actually.
Oh, perfect. Let's hear them.
Okay, so we've got wisdom, which is Sophia, courage, Andrea, justice, dikaiosine, and temperance, sophrosing. Did I pronounce those right?
You nailed them. And those 4 pillars hold up the entire philosophical structure. What is so compelling about Ferb is how he demonstrates them through action rather than, giving lectures.
Let's break those down so they aren't just ancient vocabulary words for everyone listening.
Sure. So Sophia, or wisdom in this context, isn't about memorizing encyclopedias. It's phronesis practical wisdom, the ability to navigate complex reality.
You're like knowing what actually matters.
Exactly. It's knowing the difference between what is good, what is bad, and what is indifferent. Ferb constantly demonstrates this. He doesn't get distracted by drama. He knows exactly how to read a complex blueprint and just execute it.
And then there's courage, Andrea. I usually think of courage as like a soldier on a battlefield.
Right, that's the Hollywood version. But in the Stoic framework, everyday courage is far more vital. It's the courage to endure difficulties without losing your nerve.
So like the courage to face a blank page.
Exactly. To start a massive project when failure is likely, or to stand firm when chaos erupts around you. Then we have dikaiosine, justice. This is about treating others with absolute fairness and working for the common good.
Which they do constantly on the show. I mean, they aren't building these backyard beaches or space lasers to get rich.
No, they never charge admission.
Right, they open them up to the whole neighborhood for free. They're aggressively community-minded.
It's a perfect example of Stoic cosmopolitanism. That's the idea that we are all citizens of the world and must help each other. And finally, we arrive at Sophrosyne, temperance, or moderation.
And this is the one that really defines Ferb, right?
Absolutely. It is profound self-discipline. It's the mastery over one's own desires, impulses, and ego.
Applying this to the real world, this dynamic duo reminds me vividly of the modern workplace, specifically in, like, tech or startups.
Oh, that's a great comparison.
Yeah, so Phineas is the charismatic founder. He's the guy pacing around the boardroom, pitching the wild vision to the venture capitalists, waving his hands, talking a mile a minute. We're going to disrupt the transportation industry by building a roller coaster to the moon.
And the investors are just captivated by the energy, the grand vision of it all.
Exactly. But then they look over to the corner of the room, and there is the lead engineer sitting quietly with his laptop, maybe sipping a glass of water. That's Ferb.
The anchor.
Right. The founder sells the dream, but Ferb actually writes the code. He builds the structural integrity. He turns the chaotic, impossible vision into tangible reality, and he does it without breaking a sweat or demanding the spotlight.
That analogy tracks perfectly, and it raises a deeply necessary question for self-reflection for everyone listening right now. In your professional life, are you a Phineas or a Ferb?
Culturally, we definitely gravitate toward rewarding the Phineas types.
We do. We promote the loud, energetic visionaries who dominate the meetings. But cultivating Ferb's strength and absolute calm is an unrecognized superpower in a noisy, ego-driven professional environment.
It really is a superpower. So the question then becomes, how do we actually cultivate that? Because workplaces are deafening. There are constant Slack notifications, shifting deadlines, office politics, rumors, layoffs.
It's chaotic.
So how do we channel our inner lead engineer? I think to understand how Ferb maintains this fortress of calm, we have to examine a central Stoic pillar regarding how he handles the surrounding chaos. And this brings us to a philosopher who understood chaos better than anyone, Epictetus.
Epictetus is a phenomenal figure to bring into this. He was born into slavery in ancient Rome and lived with a physical disability, a crippled leg. Eventually, he gained his freedom and became one of the most sought-after philosophical teachers of his era.
Wow, so he really lived it.
Oh, his teachings are not theoretical. They were forged in the fires of extreme hardship and a total lack of physical autonomy. His core teaching relies on something called the dichotomy of control.
I hear that phrase thrown around a lot in self-help circles.
Yeah.
But what does it actually mean in practice?
It is we must look at every single event, every person, every challenge, and draw a hard line. On one side are externals, things not under our control. On the other side are our own choices, judgments, and actions, the only things we truly command.
So it's about drawing an absolute impermeable boundary in your mind.
Precisely. If we look at Ferb's daily environment, it is a masterclass in this dichotomy. Every day, the boys are executing massive structural engineering projects in a suburban backyard. And every day, they are besieged by unpredictable, chaotic variables.
Oh, let's talk about the biggest chaotic variable, their older sister, Candace.
Yes, Candace.
She is practically vibrating with anxiety and rage in every single episode. Her entire mission in life is to bust them. She's frantically running around screaming, trying to drag their mom into the backyard to catch them in the act and just ruin their project.
And meanwhile, their pet platypus, Perry, is another wild variable. He just constantly wanders off and vanishes without a trace.
Right. Two massive disruptions that would derail any normal person. But observe Ferb's reaction. He never wastes a single ounce of energy emotionally reacting to Candace's sabotage attempts or Perry's disappearance.
Not fair.
He doesn't complain to Phineas about how unfair Candace is being. He doesn't run around the neighborhood panicking about the platypus.
But, well, let me push back on this a little bit, though, because a lot of people might look at Ferb ignoring Candace, who is actively trying to destroy his work, and call that passive.
Yeah.
Shouldn't he establish a boundary? Shouldn't he stand up for himself, tell her off, or try to actively block her from getting their mom?
I totally see why you'd think that, because our modern psychological instinct is to confront toxic behavior. We're taught to call it out.
Right.
But from a Stoic perspective, fighting Candace is a trap. And this is where the concept of Amor Fati comes in. It translates to love of fate. And let's be very clear, this is not passivity.
Okay, distinguish that for me.
Passivity is throwing your hands up and surrendering. Amor Fati is the hyper-efficient allocation of human energy.
Hyper-efficient allocation of energy. Okay, break down the mechanics of that. How does loving fate make you efficient?
Think of your daily mental energy as a finite battery. You wake up with, say, 100 percentage points of focus and resilience. If Ferb spends 40% of his battery getting angry at Candace, arguing with her and plotting against her,
And another 20% worrying about where Perry went.
exactly, then he only has 40% left to actually construct a functioning time machine. Candace's psychological state and her behavior are entirely out of his control.
Yeah.
Perry's whereabouts are out of his control.
So he can't logic Candace out of her hysteria because she didn't logic herself into it.
That is a brilliant way to phrase it, yes. By fully accepting these uncontrollable variables, by looking at Candace and saying internally, this is the reality of the situation, the sister is panicking, I accept it fully. Ferb reclaims 100% of his energy.
Wow.
He funnels all of that reclaimed battery power into the only thing on the right side of the dichotomy, the technical execution of the project itself.
So he isn't ignoring her because he's a pushover. He's ignoring her because engaging with her is a terrible investment of his finite resources.
Exactly. He is relentlessly protecting his focus. Every single time you emotionally comment on something outside your control, you are paying a heavy tax with your attention.
Let's translate this directly to the listener's workplace then, because everyone listening has a Candace in their office.
Oh, 100%.
Maybe it's a micromanager boss who constantly changes the goalposts. Maybe it's a coworker who thrives on manufacturing drama in the Slack channels. You know, always playing the victim or stirring the pot. How do we stop paying that emotional tax? Give us some concrete tips here.
It starts with recognizing the boundary of your control in real time, the exact moment the stimulus hits. So let's say that unpredictable coworker sends a passive-aggressive, undermining email, and they copy your manager.
Oh, the word.
The worst. Your biological impulse, your ego, demands that you draft a fiery response. You want to march over to their desk. You want to vent to another coworker by the coffee machine. You want to ruminate on the sheer injustice of it all during your drive home.
And by doing all that, you are draining your battery on something you cannot change.
Right, so the everyday implementation of Ferb's Stoicism is to insert a pause. You look at the email and you perform the Epictetus categorization. You ask yourself, can I control this person's deep-seated insecurities that cause them to send this?
No.
Can I control their unprofessional tone?
No.
Can I reach through the screen and make them a better teammate?
Also, no.
Right. So what can you control?
You can control your professional, emotionless, data-driven response to the email. And you can control your own work output for the remaining 6 hours of the day.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You practice Amor Fati by accepting that toxic coworkers exist in the world. They are a feature of nature, like rain. You don't yell at the rain for making you wet.
You just open an umbrella.
You open an umbrella and get back to work. You pivot your energy back to your own execution.
It's like building a mental firewall. You allow the noise to hit the exterior wall, you observe it hitting the wall, but you explicitly deny it access to your internal network.
That's a perfect metaphor.
I want to pose a question to you, the listener, right now. A real moment of Ferb-inspired self-reflection. Who or what is the Candace in your life right now? What situation or person is frantically running around trying to sabotage your peace? And more importantly, how much of your precious daily energy budget are you wasting by getting angry about it instead of focusing on your own technical execution?
It is a deeply confronting question if you answer it honestly.
It really is.
Because we love to complain, it feels like action, you know? But it's really just a leakage of energy, and mastering that internal emotional energy, achieving that hyper-efficiency we talked about, perfectly explains Ferb's most famous distinguishing external trait, his extreme silence.
Oh, this is one of my favorite aspects of his character, and it brings us directly to the teachings of Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher king.
Let's talk about Marcus Aurelius.
So he was the emperor of Rome. He had ultimate power, yet he wrote endlessly in his personal journal, which we now know as the Meditations, about the vital necessity of moderation in speech. He believed one should speak only when absolutely necessary and when it actively serves the truth.
And there is arguably no better modern pop culture representation of this than Ferb. I mean, as fans of the show know, Ferb notoriously speaks only one perfectly placed sentence in almost every single episode.
It is his absolute trademark. There will be like 20 minutes of sheer auditory chaos, explosions, musical numbers, Phineas talking a mile a minute, Dr. Doofenshmirtz monologuing across town.
And Ferb is completely mute through all of it.
Completely. And then at the very end of the episode, the chaos clears, the dust settles, and boom, Ferb delivers one sentence.
And what's crucial to analyze here is the nature of that silence. It is emphatically not a weakness. It is not an emptiness. He isn't quiet because he lacks the intellect to contribute, or because he's painfully shy, or because his mind is blank.
Right, he isn't an NPC, like a non-player character just standing in the background.
Far from it. His silence is a manifestation of extreme observational skill, deep reflection, and that virtue of sophrosyn we discussed earlier, emotional self-mastery. By actively choosing not to voice every single passing thought, he frees up cognitive bandwidth to truly listen.
He is observing the variables of the room, tracking the flow of the project, analyzing the structural weaknesses.
And here is where it gets incredibly relevant to me. If you look at our modern corporate culture and society at large with social media, we are conditioned to believe the exact opposite about communication.
Oh, completely. We equate volume with value.
Yes. If you're in a meeting, the person who dominates the airspace, who talks over others, who uses the most buzzwords, we assume they are the leader. On social media, you have to post 3 times a day just to prove you exist. We think the loudest person in the room is the smartest.
It is an exhausting culture of continuous broadcast. Everyone is transmitting, but almost no one is actually receiving.
To put an analogy to it, comparing typical modern communication to Ferb's communication is like comparing a machine gun to a sniper rifle.
Ooh, I like that.
Most of us in a meeting act like a machine gun. We make a ton of noise, we spray bullets everywhere hoping something hits the target, we create a massive cloud of smoke, and eventually the barrel overheats. We just talk to be seen talking.
Like when someone says, just to piggyback off what Dave said.
Yes, I'd like to echo Dave's point and just add some color. It's pure noise.
Yeah.
It adds no tangible value to the project. But Ferb operates as the sniper. He gets to a vantage point. He waits. He watches the wind direction, calculates the drop.
He lets the machine gunners waste all their ammunition.
Exactly. And then, when the moment is exactly right, he uses one single, perfectly calibrated round to hit the target with devastating precision. Precision versus noise.
That analogy perfectly captures the Stoic approach to speech. Marcus Aurelius wrote extensively about stripping away the unnecessary. He would ask himself constantly, is this necessary? When you cut away the performative talking, the complaining, the idle gossip, the virtue signaling, what is actually left?
Just the core truth.
Exactly. Only what is true, useful, and kind.
I completely agree with the philosophy, but how can our listener actually practice this Ferb-like moderation? Because, you know, sitting in silence during a lively discussion is physically uncomfortable for a lot of people.
It really is.
When there's a 3-second pause in a conversation, our biological instinct is to rush in and fill it with words so we don't look disengaged. So what are some concrete tips for the everyday implementation of this?
It requires immense intentionality and a willingness to be uncomfortable. So here is a concrete exercise for you to try tomorrow. In your next team meeting or Zoom call, make a conscious, private commitment. Decide that you will try to be the absolute last person to speak.
Oh, wow. That is going to be agonizing for some people.
It will be, because you have to sit on your impulses. Your ego will scream at you to interject so people know you're smart. But ignore the ego. While others are talking, don't just sit there mentally drafting your brilliant response.
Which is what we all usually do.
Right. Instead, turn off your transmitter and turn your receiver all the way up. Truly observe the room. Watch the interpersonal dynamics. Notice who is repeating themselves because they feel unheard. Notice what vital questions are not being asked.
So you're gathering high-quality data while everyone else is just making noise.
Yes. You become the most informed person in the room. And then, at the very end of the meeting, when you finally do unmute yourself, distill all of that observation into one high-impact, undeniably true statement or question. Do not wrap it in corporate apologies or buzzwords. Don't say, I might be wrong here, but...
Right. Just state the truth clearly.
Exactly.
It's the economic law of supply and demand. If you constantly talk, the supply of your words is infinite, so their value drops to zero. People just tune you out. But if you practice Ferb's moderation, the supply of your words is incredibly scarce. So when you do finally speak, the demand skyrockets.
Everyone stops, turns, and listens.
You harness silence as a tool of immense power, rather than a symptom of weakness.
Perfectly said.
Okay, so we've established how to build the mental firewall against chaos, and how to weaponize silence to increase our impact. But as anyone who works in a complex job knows, sometimes you do everything right. You focus, you build, you execute perfectly, and disaster still strikes.
Oh, inevitably.
What happens when all of that quiet, precise hard work is instantly destroyed?
This brings us to what I consider the most advanced Stoic test that Ferb consistently faces. We see this play out structurally in almost every single episode of the series.
It's the tragedy of the disappearing inventions. Let's set the scene for the listener. These two brothers spend hours, sometimes days in the timeline of the show, constructing absolute architectural and scientific marvels. A fully functioning time machine, a roller coaster that goes across the entire city, a zero-gravity biodome.
Hundreds of hours of implied intellectual labor, physical engineering, and creative genius.
And then the climax of the episode arrives. Through a chain of utterly absurd, Rube Goldberg-esque coincidences, usually involving the villain, Dr. Doofenshmirtz, firing some chaotic laser beam across the tri-state area, the beam bounces off a satellite, hits the invention, and poof.
Gone.
The massive structure vanishes into thin air, entirely erased from existence exactly 2 seconds before their mom walks into the backyard.
The comedic timing is perfect, but the philosophical implications are profound.
It is totally wiped from reality. Now, Phineas often reacts to this with a kind of bemused, optimistic smile, like, oh, that was fun. But Ferb's reaction is deeply instructive. Ferb shows absolutely zero frustration.
None.
He doesn't drop his wrench in despair. He doesn't scream at the sky. He shows zero anger and zero sadness over the total loss of all that incredibly hard work.
And this touches on the very core of the Stoic attitude toward external goods, success, and loss.
I need you to go deep on this because, frankly, if I experienced that, I would be inconsolable. I think about our listener right now. Imagine you're working on a massive, career-defining presentation.
A huge project.
Yeah, you've worked on it for 3 weeks, you've skipped lunches, you've stayed late, you missed your kid's soccer game. You finally finished the slide deck, the data is perfect, the narrative is tight, and then, an hour before the meeting, your computer suffers a catastrophic hard drive failure.
Oh, painful.
The file is corrupted, there's no cloud backup, and then you get an email saying the client canceled the contract anyway. It is soul-crushing. How does Ferb just watch the roller coaster disappear without breaking down?
He can do it because he has internalized a fundamental Stoic truth. The inherent value of his day does not lie in the possession of the final product. The value lies entirely in the activity itself. It is the virtue of creating.
The activity itself.
Right. There's a famous analogy used by the early Stoic thinkers, often attributed to Antipater or Chrysippus, regarding an archer.
The Stoic archer, how does that work?
Imagine an expert archer aiming at a target. The archer controls everything leading up to the release of the string. They control their stance, their breathing, the tension of the bow, the sharpness of the arrow, and their focus on the bullseye. Up until the exact millisecond the arrow leaves the bow, the archer is in total command.
Right, they are locked in.
But the moment the arrow is in the air, it is subject to fate. A sudden gust of wind could blow it off course. A bird could fly into its path. The target itself could suddenly move. If the archer ties their entire self-worth and happiness strictly to whether the arrow hits the bullseye, they are placing their emotional stability in the hands of the wind.
Because the wind doesn't care about your stance.
Exactly. They are making themselves a victim of external forces. The Stoic archer, therefore, aims to shoot excellently but detaches from the outcome. Their goal is not I must hit the target. Their goal is, I will perform the art of archery flawlessly. If the wind blows the arrow away, the Stoic archer remains untroubled because they still fulfilled their goal of shooting with virtue.
That is a massive psychological shift. So Ferb is the archer, the roller coaster is the arrow, and Dr. Doofenshmirtz's laser beam is the gust of wind.
You hit the nail on the head. If you shift your psychological framework to value the process over the product, if your primary objective each day is simply to be a person who works with diligence, who applies wisdom to complex problems, and who collaborates well with others, then no one can ever steal your success.
Wow.
A hard drive failing cannot erase the fact that you exercised discipline and sharpened your analytical skills for 3 wins. The client canceling doesn't negate your intellectual growth. Ferb successfully spent his day exercising his genius. The disappearance of the physical object doesn't delete the virtue he accumulated.
So for the listener dealing with a dead project, a canceled launch, or a failed initiative, how do they practically apply this detachment?
It requires redefining your personal metrics for success at the end of the workday. Most people log off and ask themselves, did I get the result I wanted today? Did I close the deal? Did I finish the report? If the answer is no, they feel like a failure.
So what's the concrete tip here? What should they ask instead?
Change the question. Ask yourself, did I apply my best effort, focus, and skill to the process today?
You separate the doing from the getting.
You must value the doing. Valuing the process over the outcome is the ultimate impenetrable shield against professional burnout. Burnout often happens not just from working hard, but from working hard and feeling like the external rewards aren't matching the effort.
That makes total sense.
When your reward is internal, the quiet pride of knowing you operated with excellence, you become incredibly resilient.
That reframing changes everything. It's like playing a deeply complex video game. You play it for the sheer joy and challenge of the mechanics, for the flow state of playing. You don't play it just to look at the game over screen at the end.
That's a perfect modern equivalent. The joy is in the engagement, not the termination of the activity.
I love that. But I want to pivot to something even more extreme. Because it's one thing to stay calm when a PowerPoint presentation disappears, or even a backyard invention. It's devastating to your ego, sure, but it's not life-threatening.
No, it's not.
It's an entirely different level of mastery, to face imminent physical destruction without flinching. And this is where we see Ferb's philosophy tested under maximum pressure.
We are entering the territory of Ataraxia. In several specific episodes, the show puts the boys in scenarios of extreme, visceral danger. We're not talking about a grounded teenager issue here. We are talking about traveling 300 million years back in time and finding themselves staring down a hungry Tyrannosaurus Rex.
Or being strapped into a highly experimental roller coaster that suddenly malfunctions midair.
Scenarios where the threat of death is immediate, and the contrast in the animation is brilliant. The other characters, Candace, the neighborhood kids, even Isabella, sometimes are understandably losing their minds. Their eyes are wide, they are screaming in pure terror, throwing their hands up.
But the animators make a very deliberate choice with Ferb. His facial expression remains completely, utterly unchanged.
He remains the unflappable anchor in the center of a hurricane. And this beautifully illustrates the Greek concept of ataraxia. It translates roughly to unshakable calmness, or the total tranquility of the soul. For the Epicureans and the Stoics, achieving ataraxia was the ultimate endgame of philosophy. It's the state where no external shock can rattle your internal foundation.
Now, I have to challenge the practicality of this for a moment, because we were talking about applying philosophy to real biological humans. Is it actually healthy or even biologically possible to not show fear when a literal T-Rex is staring at you?
That is a very fair point.
Right. Isn't fear an evolutionary necessity? If a predator is looking at me, my amygdala, the lizard brain, is screaming RN. That cortisol dump is what kept our ancestors alive. Is Stoicism asking us to magically turn off our biology?
That is a fantastic pushback, and it's actually a critique the original Stoics faced in their own time. People accuse them of trying to be statues instead of men. Yeah. But the Stoics were actually incredibly astute observers of human psychology and biology. They recognized what they called propathii, which translates to first movements or the first impulse.
The biological jolt.
Exactly. The sudden shot of adrenaline, the quickening of the heart, the instant tightening of the muscles, the instinct to freeze or flee. The Stoics freely acknowledge that you cannot control this first impulse. It is an automatic, hardwired physiological response. If a door slams loudly behind you, you will flinch. You can't philosophy your way out of a flinch.
So Ferb is experiencing the physical sensation of fear.
Yes. The key distinction is that Ferb does not react to the first panic impulse. He feels the physical sensation of the drop on the roller coaster, his heart rate probably spikes, but he doesn't let that biological reality hijack his cognitive machinery.
So there's a gap.
That gap is everything. As the psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor Viktor Frankl profoundly noted, between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response.
That is such a powerful quote.
It is. Ferb's superpower resides entirely in that split-second pause between the stimulus, the T-Rex roaring, and his response. Most people let the first panic impulse flood their brain, bypassing the prefrontal cortex, and they just start screaming. Ferb feels the jolt, but he forcefully holds the line. In that critical pause, he shifts his brain's activity away from the emotional center and forces it into the logical, analytical center.
He overrides the biological default setting. He essentially says, okay, adrenaline is pumping, the threat is acknowledged. Now, what is the geometric angle of the T-Rex's jaw? What is the tensile strength of this vine? And how quickly can I modify this time machine remote?
Exactly. He converts the kinetic energy of raw fear into the highly focused energy of problem solving.
That mechanism is incredibly applicable to crisis management today. Obviously, our listeners probably aren't dodging prehistoric predators, but they are dealing with metaphorical T-Rexes in the workplace all the time.
Absolutely. A metaphorical T-Rex could be a catastrophic server crash during the most important product launch of the year. It could be waking up to a sudden PR disaster going viral on Twitter. It could be getting a call from your CFO that your biggest client is unexpectedly pulling all their funding and payroll might not clear.
Those are moments that trigger the exact same biological panic response. The stomach drops, the hands sweat. Let's give a listener a concrete step-by-step crisis protocol based on this concept of ataraxia. How do we swallow that first panic impulse when the server goes up in flames?
Let's build a Ferb-inspired emergency protocol. Step 1. Acknowledge the physical jolt without judgment. When you get that disastrous phone call, you will feel your stomach drop. Do not fight the feeling or panic about panicking.
Just observe it.
Just observe it. Internally state, my body is experiencing a massive adrenaline dump. This is normal biology. Labeling the physiological state immediately begins to strip away its terrifying power.
You act as an observer of your own biology. What's step 2?
Step 2 is the physical pause. This is non-negotiable. Before you speak a single word, before you frantically type a doom-laden message in the company Slack channel, and before you run down the hall, take one deep, deliberate breath. Inhale through the nose, exhale slowly through the mouth.
It sounds simple, but it's hard to do in the moment.
It's very hard, but it physically slows your heart rate and sends a neurological signal to your brain that you are not, in fact, being eaten by a bear.
You are artificially widening that gap between stimulus and response.
Exactly. You are buying your prefrontal cortex time to boot up. Then comes step 3. Shift to logic by asking a highly specific technical question. Ferb's mind immediately goes to the mechanics of the environment. Instead of looking at the crashed server and screaming, oh my God, we're ruined, the company is dead, you force your brain to ask a question.
Like what kind of question?
Something like, what is the very first technical step required to identify the root cause of the reboot failure? Or, who physically holds the login credentials for the backup server and what is their phone number?
By forcing your brain to search for a highly specific, micro-level data point, you drag yourself out of macro-level despair.
By focusing intensely on the micromechanics of the solution, the overwhelming terror of the problem begins to fade. You become the anchor in the room. And here is a universal truth of business in any professional crisis. The person who maintains ataraxia, the person who calmly starts assessing the variables and asking technical questions while everyone else is running around pulling their hair out, that is the person who organically becomes the leader.
Regardless of their actual job title.
Exactly. They lead the team out of the disaster.
It all connects back to the very first thing we discussed. Finding strength in absolute calm. It is a compounding advantage. Now, this logical, highly grounded, unflappable worldview naturally bleeds into how Ferb views the much bigger picture. Because he isn't just a mechanic, right? He's a philosopher of life, death, and human potential.
That's right.
Which brings us to a few of the rare, profound quotes he actually does say aloud on the show.
This is where we see the deep philosophical bedrock beneath his silence. There are 2 specific quotes that perfectly encapsulate the duality of this Stoic worldview.
Let's start with the first one. It happens in the middle of a totally casual, everyday conversation, And Ferb just deadpans this sentence. He says, mummies had their brains pulled out through their noses.
It's an incredibly striking, grotesque image to just drop into a summer afternoon.
I always laugh at that scene because it is such magnificent dark humor. To just bring up ancient Egyptian embalming practices out of nowhere. But through a philosophical lens, this is actually a profound exercise. This is a perfect example of memento mori, right?
Yes. Memento mori is a Latin phrase that translates directly to remember you must die. It was an absolutely vital daily practice for the Stoics. There is a famous legend that when a Roman general was parading through the city streets after a massive military victory, absorbing the cheers of the crowd and feeling like a god, a servant was tasked with standing behind him in the chariot, whispering in his ear.
Whispering.
Look behind you. Remember you are only a man. Remember you must die.
I think to a modern listener, that sounds incredibly morbid. Just walking around your office, getting a cup of coffee, actively reminding yourself that your life is going to end. It sounds like a recipe for depression.
It only sounds morbid to modern ears because our culture goes to great lengths to hide from death. We sanitize it, we ignore it, we pretend it won't happen. But for the Stoics, and clearly for Ferb, memento mori is a pragmatic, completely unagitated reminder of human mortality and biological reality. It is not meant to make you sad or nihilistic.
So what's the actual utility of it?
It is a tool designed specifically to keep your ego in check and to clarify your priorities.
Walk me through how the mummy fact accomplishes that.
When Ferb mentions the mummies, he is observing an objective, undeniable historical reality. No matter how incredibly powerful an Egyptian pharaoh was, no matter how many monuments they built, no matter how much wealth they hoarded or how many people worshipped them, in the end, they were just biology.
Just bodies.
Furthermore, the Egyptians believed the heart was the center of intelligence, so they carefully preserved it. But the brain, the seat of all that pharaoh's worries, their ego, their stress, their grand plans, they thought it was useless junk. They scrambled it and pulled it out through the nose with an iron hook.
Wow, okay. When you frame it like that, it is the ultimate perspective shift. When you were sitting at your desk, absolutely consumed with stress over a typo in an email, or fuming because a coworker took credit for your idea, remembering that the most powerful kings in history eventually had their brains pulled out with a hook, it instantly shrinks your email problem down to its actual size.
It radically cuts through the trivialities of daily life. It reminds you not to take your own self-importance or your temporary embarrassments too seriously. We are biology. Our time is incredibly short. Why spend it furious about an email?
But here's what I find so brilliant about Ferb's specific brand of philosophy. He perfectly understands we are just biology. He fully grasps memento mori. Yet he doesn't become a nihilist.
No, not at all.
He doesn't just sit under a tree in the backyard and say, well, we're all going to be dust eventually, the sun will explode, so what is the point of building a time machine? He builds it anyway.
And that profound tension leads us perfectly into the second defining quote.
Right. At another point in the show, reflecting on their grand ambitions, Ferb says, the future belongs to those who believe in the truth of their dreams.
This touches on the Stoic concept of logos and human duty. The ancient Stoics believed that the entire universe was ordered by a rational organizing principle, which they called the logos. And because human beings possess reason, we share a fragment of this divine logos.
Meaning, we aren't just random accidents, we have a built-in rational nature.
Exactly, we have a purpose. While Stoics firmly believe in fate, that Amor Fati we discussed, accepting whatever external events happen to us, they also firmly believe in the absolute duty to use one's natural abilities to the fullest. We are social creatures endowed with reason and creativity.
So it's not just about sitting back and accepting things.
No, therefore, it is our fundamental duty to create, to solve problems, and to improve the lot of our community. You do not control the outcome of your actions, but you are absolutely responsible for the quality of your effort.
So, connecting the dots here. Even if you know you are going to die, which is memento mori, and even if you know the roller coaster is going to disappear at the end of the day due to Dr. Doofenshmirtz, which is Amor Fati, it was still your absolute human duty to build that roller coaster as excellently and beautifully as possible while you had the chance.
You build it because it is in your nature to build. Ferb flawlessly balances the pragmatic, grounding reality of death with a relentless, wildly optimistic drive to construct incredible things every single day. He believes in the truth of the dream, he executes the engineering of the dream flawlessly, and then crucially, he completely detaches from the outcome.
He shoots the arrow excellently, and he lets the wind do what it will.
That is the complete, unbroken cycle of a Stoic master.
It is genuinely a revelation. I mean, who would have ever thought that a cartoon about two kids trying to make the most of their summer vacation held the exact architectural blueprint for navigating modern professional life and overcoming existential anxiety?
It's a wonderful reminder that profound wisdom isn't locked away in marble statues or dusty libraries. It can be found in the most unexpected places, hiding in plain sight if you just know how to look for it.
Let's bring all of these threads together for you, the listener. Let's synthesize everything we've uncovered today into the ultimate Ferb Fletcher guide to life.
We started with the foundational architecture, embodying the four virtues of Sophia, Andrea, Dikaiosine, and Sophrosine, moving through the world with practical wisdom, practicing everyday courage in the face of difficulty, treating your community with fairness, and maintaining deep self-discipline.
We learned how to handle our personal Candace the toxic coworker or micromanager by rigorously practicing Epictetus's dichotomy of control. We accept the uncontrollable variables with Amor Fati so we can reclaim our limited energy budget and hyper-focus on our own technical execution.
We examined the immense power of Marcus Aurelius's moderation in speech. We discussed learning to endure the physical discomfort of silence, observing the room, and choosing to become the sniper instead of the machine gun in your next meeting.
We tackled the heartbreaking reality of disappearing inventions and failed projects. We learned to shift our psychological metrics for success, valuing the internal process of doing over the external possession of the final product, forging an impenetrable shield against professional burnout.
We learned how to summon Ataraxia when the metaphorical T-Rex crashes through the wall. We acknowledged the biological reality of the first panic impulse, but practiced artificially widening the gap between stimulus and response, using technical questions to force the brain into logical problem-solving.
And finally, we balanced it all by keeping memento mori in our back pocket, remembering the mummies to keep our egos in check, while relentlessly pursuing the truth of our dreams, because it is our fundamental human duty to build. I want to offer a final reminder to you, the listener. The goal of all of this philosophy isn't to become an unfeeling stone.
Definitely not.
The goal isn't to stop experiencing the vividness of life. The goal is to stop bleeding your precious energy on the noise, the drama, and the uncontrollable variables, and start focusing it entirely on the actions that actually build your future.
It is about becoming the sovereign architect of your own inner peace, building a fortress so strong that regardless of the chaos raging outside, your internal weather remains exactly as you choose it to be.
It truly is. Now, as we close out today's deep dive, I want to leave you with a final thought to ponder. Something to let simmer in your mind as you head into the office tomorrow or as you face down your next massive challenge. Think deeply about the power of intentional speech and that sniper-like precision we discussed. Here's my question for you. If you woke up tomorrow and were magically limited to speaking only one single sentence for the entire workday, how much more closely would you listen to your colleagues, and what would that one sentence be?